"What the hell are you doing to my son?" Robert Harrington stormed into the nursery, his face a mask of fury, catching his black maid, Sarah Johnson, cradling his infant boy, James, and nursing him in secret. Her blouse slightly unbuttoned, the baby latched on peacefully. For the first time in days, the child wasn't crying or writhing in hunger. But Robert saw only violation. "You think you can just touch my child? Feed him like some wet nurse?" he roared, slapping her hard across the face. Sarah stumbled, cheek stinging, but held her ground. "I saved him. He was starving," Robert spat back. "You're fired. Get out." The slap echoed through the mansion, a brutal act of prejudice and power. Yet, why was James suddenly so calm? And what hidden truth about Sarah, tied to Robert's late wife and a buried family legacy of slavery, would soon unravel everything, forcing him to confront his deepest biases. This shocking discovery changed his life forever. If you believe in justice and redemption, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this, and comment below. Where are you watching from? Rain pounded the cracked sidewalks of Seattle's South Side, turning the evening into a gray blur. Sarah Johnson pulled her worn coat tighter, her boots splashing through puddles that reflected the flickering neon signs of corner stores. At 45, her face carried lines etched by grief, eyes dark and distant, like windows to a storm long past, but never forgotten. She fumbled for her keys outside a dingy apartment building, the kind where walls were thin and dreams even thinner. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and unwashed laundry. Sarah dropped her bag on the sagging couch, her shoulders slumping. "Another day done," she muttered to the empty room, her voice barely above a whisper. Photos on the mantel caught her eye. A wedding picture with her late husband, Marcus, his arm around her, both smiling like the world was theirs. Next to it, a tiny ultrasound print, faded now, of the daughter she'd never held. Little Grace. The car crash 2 years ago had stolen them both in one cruel twist of fate. Marcus at the wheel, a drunk driver crossing lanes. Sarah had survived, but the scars ran deep. She moved to the kitchen, pouring water into a kettle with trembling hands. Her body still ached from the day's work, scrubbing floors, folding linens, all for the Harrington family up in the hills. As a former neonatal nurse, she'd once thrived in bright hospital wards, cradling fragile lives, coaxing them to fight. But after the accident, the sight of incubators triggered panic, memories of Grace's tiny chest rising and falling one last time. She quit, trading scrubs for a maid's uniform. It paid the bills, barely, but left her in hollow. Sarah glanced at her reflection in the microwave door, dark skin glowing under the harsh light, curls tied back tightly. "You're still here," she told herself, forcing a small smile. But inside, doubt swirled. Why keep going? The grief was a constant companion, whispering that she'd failed as a wife, a mother. Yet her milk still came, a cruel reminder of what was lost. She pumped it sometimes, donating anonymously to milk banks, finding solace in helping other babies. It was her way of honoring Grace, saving lives where she couldn't save her own. The kettle whistled, jolting her. She poured tea, sinking into the couch. Tomorrow, back to the mansion. The Harringtons were distant employers, but the infant there, James, tugged at her heart. He'd been fussy lately, rejecting bottles. Sarah's instincts prickled. Something wasn't right. But she pushed it down. Not your place, she thought. Still, as sleep crept in, visions of tiny hands reaching out haunted her dreams. Morning light filtered through grimy curtains. Sarah rose early, dressing in her uniform, crisp white blouse, black skirt. She caught the bus uptown, the city awakening around her. Passengers chatted about weather, work, but Sarah stared out the window, lost in thought. One foot in front of the other, she reminded herself. At the estate gates, she buzzed in, stealing for another day of invisibility. Little did she know, fate was about to demand she step into the light. High above the city, in a mansion perched on the edge of Puget Sound, Robert Harrington slammed his phone down on the mahogany desk. His study overlooked manicured lawns rolling to the water's edge, but today, the view did nothing to calm him. At 50, Robert cut an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading his dark hair. His face, usually set in a mask of controlled confidence, now twisted in frustration. "Damn suppliers," he growled, pacing the room. As a real estate tycoon, he'd built Harrington Developments from scratch, turning abandoned lots into luxury high-rises. But his success stemmed from roots he rarely acknowledged, a conservative Southern family that migrated north after the Civil War, carrying whispers of plantations and buried shame. Robert had inherited their prejudices, subtle but ironclad, lines between us and them, drawn by class and color. He glanced at a framed photo on the shelf, his late wife, Emily, smiling softly, cradling her belly. 6 months gone, and the wound still bled. She'd died in childbirth, complications the doctors couldn't predict. Now, their son James lay in the nursery upstairs, weak and wailing. The boy rejected every formula, growing thinner by the day. Robert's fists clenched. "Why can't you just eat?" he thought, guilt mixing with anger. He blamed the nannies, the doctors, anyone but himself. Victoria, his elderly mother, entered quietly, her silver hair pinned neatly. "Robert, the baby's crying again. The maid, Sarah, she's good with him. Maybe let her try." Robert waved her off. "A maid?" "She's helping Mother. Not family." Victoria's eyes softened, but she said nothing. She knew her son's walls, built from a childhood of know your place lectures. Emily had softened him once with her quiet advocacy for charity. But now, alone, Robert retreated into arrogance. He headed to the nursery, the cries piercing like accusations. James squirmed in his crib, tiny fists flailing. Robert picked him up awkwardly, rocking him. "Come on, boy. For your mother." But the infant spat out the bottle, arching in protest. Frustration boiled over. "Useless," Robert muttered, setting him down harder than intended. He stormed out, barking orders at staff. "Fix this." Downstairs, the household hummed with tension. Maids whispered in the kitchen, avoiding Robert's gaze. Sarah moved among them, dusting silently, her presence a quiet anchor. But Robert barely noticed her, another face in the background. Little did he know, the boy's cries echoed her own past pain, drawing her closer. Conflict simmered, unseen as the day wore on. James's health declined, and Robert's control frayed. The stage was set for a collision that would expose cracks in his perfect world. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked relentlessly, its rhythm a steady drumbeat against the growing silence of the Harrington estate. Sarah wiped her brow with the back of her hand, the polishing cloth damp from hours of work. She'd spent the morning in the vast living room, dusting crystal vases and fluffing pillows that no one ever sat on. But her mind wandered upstairs, to the nursery where faint cries drifted down like distant thunder. James. The poor boy hadn't stopped fussing since dawn. Victoria had mentioned it in passing, her voice laced with worry. "He's not taking the bottle again. The doctor's coming later." Sarah paused at the foot of the grand staircase, her heart tugging. "Not your business," she reminded herself, gripping the banister. But the cries grew sharper, more desperate. She glanced around, no one in sight. Robert was at his downtown office, sealing another deal. Victoria had stepped out for errands. The other staff were in the kitchen, chatting over coffee. Sarah's feet moved before her mind could protest. She climbed the stairs quietly, her uniform swishing softly. The nursery door was ajar, sunlight streaming through lace curtains onto the crib. James lay there, red-faced and squirming, his tiny fists clenched. Bottles littered the side table, half empty and rejected. Sarah's chest tightened. Memories crashed in like waves. Grace had looked like that once, in her final moments, weak and fighting. "Shh, little one," Sarah whispered, lifting him gently. His cries softened at her touch. She rocked him, humming a lullaby Marcus used to sing. But he rooted hungrily, nuzzling against her blouse. Instinct took over. Sarah unbuttoned just enough, guiding him. He latched immediately, his body relaxing. Small gulps filling the room with peace. Time blurred. Sarah closed her eyes, lost in the moment. The warmth, the connection she'd craved since losing her own. "You're safe now," she thought, a tear slipping down her cheek. It felt right, like honoring Grace's memory. But then, the door slammed open. "What in God's name are you doing?" Robert's voice boomed like a gunshot. Sarah's eyes flew open, heart slamming against her ribs. He stood in the doorway, briefcase dropped, face contorted in shock and rage. His tie was askew from the rushed drive home. An early meeting canceled. He'd said nothing about returning. Now, his eyes locked on her, on the scene. His maid, a black woman from the wrong side of town, nursing his son as if it were natural. Sarah gently detached James, buttoning up with steady hands despite the tremor inside. "Mr. Harrington, please, let me explain." Her voice was calm, but her cheek was already flushed in anticipation of the storm. James whimpered softly, content for the first time. "Explain?" Robert stormed forward, towering over her, his face reddened, veins bulging at his temples. "You think you can just touch my son? Feed him like some wet nurse from the streets?" He spat the words, laced with venom born from years of unspoken biases. In his mind, flashes, his grandfather's stories of keeping order on the old family land, the invisible lines that separated people like him from people like her. "Who gave you the right? This is my child, my blood." Sarah stood slowly, cradling James protectively. He hadn't eaten in days. The formula, he kept spitting it out. He was getting weaker, sir. I used to be a neonatal nurse. I still produce milk from my own baby. She died, but he latched on. He needed it. Her words hung in the air, vulnerable, but Robert's fury drowned them. "Shut your mouth," he barked, fists clenching at his sides. "You crossed a line. You don't belong here, making decisions for my family." Without warning, his hand flew out, slapping her hard across the face. The crack echoed through the nursery, sharp and final. Sarah stumbled sideways, her free hand flying to her cheek, the sting blooming like fire. But she didn't drop James. She didn't scream. She just stared at Robert, eyes wide with stunned hurt, then turned her body to shield the baby. The room fell silent, save for James's soft coos. Robert's hand hung in the air, trembling, as if he couldn't believe what he'd done. Inside, a flicker of regret sparked. Emily would have hated this, but pride smothered it. "Get your hands off him," he hissed, yanking James from her arms. The baby fussed at the sudden shift. Sarah straightened, her cheek throbbing, but her voice cut through like steel. "How dare you? I saved your son!" Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back. "He's peaceful now. Look at him. Really look." Robert glanced down, seeing the change. James's relaxed face, no more cries. But he shoved the observation aside. "I don't need saving from someone like you," he spat, the words heavy with implication. Black, poor, outsider. Sarah echoed them softly. "Someone like me?" Her tone sharpened. You mean because I'm not like you? Not rich? Not white?" Robert flinched, but said nothing, his jaw set. Victoria burst in then, drawn by the noise, her face paling at the scene. "Robert, what have you done?" Staff peeked from the hallway, whispers rippling like wildfire. The slap had been loud, public enough to echo through the house, branding Sarah before them all. Maids exchanged glances, some shocked, others nodding as if confirming old prejudices. "You're fired," Robert declared, voice booming for all to hear. "Pack your things and get out. Now." He turned away, dismissing her like trash. Sarah touched her cheek again, the humiliation deeper than the pain, struck for kindness, reduced to nothing in front of witnesses. For what? Saving a life, she thought, rage mixing with sorrow. She walked past Victoria, head high despite the sting. "I'll get my bag," she said quietly. As she descended the stairs, staff averted eyes, the air thick with judgment. Outside, rain soaked her as she waited for the bus, the slap replaying in her mind. "He'll regret this," she whispered, not out of vengeance, but certainty. James was stronger now, because of her. But Robert? His world had just cracked, though he didn't know it yet. Back in the nursery, Robert paced, James in his arms. The boy's calm mocked him. "What have I done?" he thought fleetingly, but anger pushed it down. He called security to ensure she left. The estate buzzed with gossip. The maid slapped and fired before everyone. Public shame, etched in memory. Little did Robert know, this act of injustice was the spark that would ignite revelations buried for generations. Sarah's cheek burned like fire as she stepped out into the pouring rain, the estate gates clanging shut behind her. The slap still echoed in her ears, a sharp crack that drowned out the thunder rumbling overhead. She pulled her thin jacket tighter, water soaking through the fabric, but it was nothing compared to the sting on her skin or the deeper wound in her chest. How dare he, she thought, fists clenching at her sides. Not just the hit, but the words, "Someone like you." Like she was dirt, unworthy of even touching his precious child. But James, that tiny boy with his soft breaths and hungry eyes, he'd needed her. And she'd given without thinking, because that's what mothers do. Or what she would have done for Grace. She trudged down the winding road, headlights from passing cars blurring in the downpour. No bus in sight. Her mind raced back to the nursery. Robert's face twisted in rage, Victoria's shocked gasp, the staff's whispers slithering like snakes. Public humiliation broadcast through the house. "Fired," he'd said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Now what? No job, rent due, memories of Marcus mocking her from the shadows. "You always give too much, Sarah," he'd say with that gentle smile. But giving was all she had left. By the time she reached her apartment, drenched and shivering, the anger had simmered into resolve. She peeled off her wet clothes, wrapping herself in a faded robe that still smelled faintly of Marcus's cologne. The mirror showed a red welt blooming on her cheek, but her eyes held fire. "I didn't cry then. Won't now," she muttered, pressing ice to the mark. Sitting on the bed, she replayed it all. James had latched so eagerly, his little body finally at peace. He stopped crying because of me. That truth anchored her. Robert could slap her, fire her, but he couldn't erase that she'd saved his son. She picked up her phone, fingers hovering over Victoria's number. The older woman had looked horrified, mouthing, "I'm sorry," as Sarah left. But calling felt like begging. No, Sarah decided, setting it down. Instead, she brewed tea, the steam rising like her building defiance. "He thinks I'm nothing? I'll show him." But how? Jobless, marked by gossip, Word would spread in Seattle's tight-knit domestic circles. Black Maid oversteps, gets what she deserves. The thought twisted her gut. Yet, deep down, a voice whispered, "Stay for the boy." James needed her. And maybe, just maybe, Robert would see the change in his son and question himself. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Robert paced the study, the slap replaying in his mind like a bad dream. His hand still tingled, a ghost of the violence. What the hell was that? He thought, pouring scotch with shaking fingers. James slept soundly upstairs, no cries piercing the night for the first time in weeks. Victoria had tucked him in, her silence accusatory. "You went too far, Robert," she'd said before retreating to her room. He sank into his leather chair, staring at the family portrait, Emily's warm eyes judging him. She'd hate me for this, but pride armored him. She crossed a line, he justified, sipping the burning liquid. Sarah, a maid, black from the projects, daring to nurse his son? It violated everything. Boundaries, bloodlines, control. His southern grandfather's voice echoed, "Know their place." Yet, doubt crept in. James's peaceful face flashed before him. Coincidence, he dismissed. He grabbed his phone, dialing the investigator again. "Dig deeper on that, Maid. I want everything." Hanging up, he leaned back, observing the empty house. Staff avoided him, their eyes downcast. Good. They knew who was in charge. Morning broke with gray skies. Sarah rose early, the welt on her cheek purpling into a bruise. She covered it with makeup, but the mirror didn't lie. "Keep moving," she said in her reflection. No work today, but bills loomed. She headed to a local cafe, nursing coffee, and scanning job ads on her phone. Neonatal nursing postings stared back, but panic rose at the thought. Can't go back there. Memories of beeping monitors, tiny cries fading. Instead, she texted a friend in domestic service. "Lost the Harrington gig. Any leads?" The reply came quickly. "Heard about the slap. Word's out. Be careful." Sarah's stomach knotted. Public already? She glanced around the cafe, paranoia prickling. But then, her phone buzzed. Victoria. "Sarah, please come back. James is better, but we need to talk." Hesitation gripped her. Trap? But the boy's image pulled her. For him, she decided, replying, "On my way." At the estate, Robert watched from his study window as Sarah's bus pulled up. "What's she doing here?" he barked at Victoria over the intercom. "I invited her," his mother replied firmly. "See for yourself what she's done." Robert's jaw tightened, but curiosity won. He observed from afar as Sarah entered, head high despite the bruise peeking through makeup. Victoria hugged her briefly. "I'm so sorry, dear." Sarah nodded, voice low. "It's not your fault. How's James?" Upstairs, Sarah checked on the boy, his breathing even. Color returned to his cheeks. "He's stronger," she whispered, relief washing over her. Robert lurked in the hallway shadow, watching her gentle touch. How, he wondered, a crack in his armor. James cooed at Sarah, reaching out. Robert's chest tightened. Emily had that effect on people, but he shoved it down. She's still an outsider. Sarah felt eyes on her, glancing up to catch Robert's silhouette retreating. He's watching, she thought, a mix of anger and hope. Good. Let him see. She stayed an hour, feeding James a bottle he'd now accept, his system primed by her milk. Victoria pleaded, "Stay temporarily, for the baby." Sarah agreed, but with conditions. No more violence, and respect. Victoria nodded. Robert, eavesdropping, felt a pang. Temporary, he told himself. But observation turned to reluctant admiration as James thrived. Days blurred. Sarah moved quietly through the house, her presence a quiet rebellion. The staff whispered less, seeing the boy's improvement. Robert observed from his office, reports piling up ignored. The investigator called. She's clean, widow, ex-nurse. But ties to your wife's charity work. Robert paused. Dig more. Inside, conflict brewed. Sarah's bruise faded, but her resolve didn't. He'll break first, she thought, catching his glances. The hero in her stirred, ready to push back. Robert, the unwitting observer, began to question. Was she really the enemy? Or the mirror he needed? Evenings, Sarah journaled in her room, now a guest suite at Victoria's insistence. Today, James smiled at me. Robert watched, but said nothing. Her words flowed, mixing grief with purpose. Grace would want this. Robert, in his study, pored over Emily's old letters, a nagging feeling growing. What did you know, Em? He observed Sarah rocking James to sleep, her lullaby floating down the hall. For the first time, jealousy mixed with curiosity. Who is she, really? The tension built subtly. Sarah confronted a gossiping maid. Say it to my face. The woman backed down. Robert saw from afar her strength shining. Not broken, he thought. A flicker of respect, but pride held firm. Sarah sensed the shift. He's starting to see. As the hero, she bided time, gathering strength. The escalation loomed, but for now, observation was her weapon, and his undoing. Robert slammed his office door, the sound reverberating through the estate like a declaration of war. His tie felt like a noose, tightening with every breath. She's still here, he muttered, glaring at the security feed on his computer screen. Sarah moved through the nursery on camera, her form efficient and calm as she changed James's diaper. The boy gurgled happily, a sound that grated on Robert's nerves. Temporary, Victoria had called it. But days had turned into a week, and Sarah's presence lingered like an unwelcome shadow. He picked up his phone, dialing the investigator with a snarl. Follow her, everywhere. I want to know who she talks to, where she goes after hours. If she's scheming, I need proof. The man on the other end hesitated. Sir, she's clean so far. Ex-nurse, no ties. Robert cut him off. Dig deeper. Everyone has dirt. He hung up, leaning back in his chair, a smug curl to his lips. She thinks she can play house here? I'll bury her. Downstairs, in the kitchen, Robert gathered the staff like a general addressing troops. Maids and cooks lined up, eyes downcast. He paced before them, voice booming. That woman, Sarah, she's on thin ice. If I catch any of you helping her beyond the basics, you're gone. She's not family. She's helping me. A young maid shifted uncomfortably, but Robert's glare silenced her. Spread the word. She overstepped, invaded my son's space. No one trusts a sneak. Whispers erupted as they dispersed, gossip seeds planted ready to bloom. Robert smirked inwardly. Let them isolate her. She'll crack. Sarah felt the chill immediately. In the pantry, stocking shelves, two maids turned away as she entered. Morning, she said softly. But they muttered excuses and left, their backs rigid. What's that about? She wondered, a knot forming in her stomach. Later, folding laundry, the head housekeeper snatched a sheet from her hands. I'll handle this. You stick to the baby. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Did Mr. Harrington say something? The woman avoided her gaze. Just know your place. Sarah's cheek twitched, the faded bruise a reminder. My place is saving that child, she thought, biting back retort. Upstairs, James napped peacefully, his chest rising steadily. Sarah watched him, her hand on the crib rail. You're why I'm here, she whispered, strength renewing. But isolation gnawed. Meals alone in her room, staff avoiding eye contact. Like I'm poison, she thought, tears pricking. Victoria noticed, slipping her extra tea. Ignore them, dear. Robert's stubborn. Sarah nodded, but inside resolve hardened. He won't break me. Robert's arrogance swelled with each passing hour. At dinner, he cornered Victoria in the dining room, crystal glasses clinking under his grip. Why is she still here? James is fine now. Victoria met his eyes. Because of her. Admit it. Robert laughed, a harsh bark. Admit what? That a maid did what nannies couldn't? Please. She's lucky I haven't sued for trespass. He poured wine, swirling it smugly. Tomorrow, I'll have proof to boot her out. Watch. That night, the investigator texted. Photos of Sarah at a milk bank, donating. Harmless, the message read. Robert's face twisted. Harmless? She's using my time for her sob story. He forwarded the images to a lawyer friend. Draft a cease and desist. If she steps wrong, we hit her with an invasion of privacy. The reply came quickly. Overkill, but doable. Robert grinned in the mirror, adjusting his collar. Power. That's what separates us. The next morning, he escalated publicly. In the foyer, as staff bustled, he called Sarah down. She descended the stairs, chin high, but her heart pounded. Yes, sir. Robert stood tall, voice carrying. I've got eyes on you. One wrong move, and I'll drag you to court. You think you can waltz in, play mother? This is my house, my rules. Staff peeked from doorways, gasps rippling. Sarah's face heated, but she held steady. I'm here for James, nothing more. Robert stepped closer, towering. And you'll leave when I say. Be gone by week's weekend. His tone dripped condescension, like swatting a fly. Sarah retreated to the nursery, slamming the door softly. Bastard, she thought, pacing. James stirred and she scooped him up, rocking fiercely. He can't touch us here. But fear crept in, isolation turning to paranoia. Who's watching? She glanced at the windows, curtains drawn. Outside, the investigator's car idled down the street, binoculars glinting. Robert, in his office, reviewed more reports. Sarah's old nursing records, her accident details. Widow, huh? Probably after sympathy. Or money. He leaked tidbits to staff via the housekeeper. She's unstable. Lost her own kid. Might be desperate. Rumors flew. She's faking the nurse thing. I want the inheritance. Sarah overheard in the hall, a maid whispering. Mr. H says she's a gold digger. Her blood boiled. Lies, she thought, confronting the woman. Say it louder. The maid fled. Arrogance fueled Robert's fire. At a business lunch downtown, he boasted to colleagues. Dealt with a pushy maid. Slapped sense into her, figuratively. Laughter erupted, but one man frowned. Careful, Rob. Lawsuits. Robert waved it off. She wouldn't dare. People like her know better. Back home, he upped the ante. Locked the nursery at night, key in his pocket. No more midnight feedings, he told Victoria smugly. Control the narrative. Sarah felt the walls closing. Staff shunned her openly now. Meals left cold outside her door. Like a prisoner, she thought, hugging her knees in bed. But James's smiles kept her going. For you, she whispered through the bars of isolation. Victoria slipped notes. Hold on. But Robert's Ngao man peeked in a hallway confrontation. You're nothing here, he hissed as she passed. A temp fix. Pack up. Sarah stopped, eyes locking on him. Nothing? I gave your son life when you couldn't. He recoiled, but recovered with a sneer. Watch your tongue, or I'll make sure no one hires you again. The threat hung heavy. Sarah's isolation deepened, staff treating her like a ghost. He's winning, she thought, doubt creeping in. But deep down, fire burned. Not yet. Robert, in his study, toasted himself with scotch. She'll break. They always do. His arrogance blinded him to the storm brewing, the truth waiting to shatter his world. The estate's grand halls felt like a prison, shadows lengthening as evening fell. Sarah wiped down the nursery windows, her reflection staring back. Eyes hollow, bruise fading, but the ache inside deepening. Whispers followed her everywhere now, staff slithering away like ghosts. "Gold digger," one muttered in the laundry room. "Unstable," another hissed in the pantry. Robert's poison had spread, turning the house against her. She gripped the cloth tighter, knuckles whitening. "Hold on," she told herself, but the walls pressed in, suffocating. That night, a knock echoed, sharp, unyielding. Sarah opened her guest room door to find Robert standing there, arms crossed, an envelope in hand. His face was a mask of cold triumph, eyes gleaming with that arrogant fire. "Your final pay," he said, thrusting it forward. She took it, fingers brushing the paper. Inside, half the amount owed. "This is short," she said evenly, meeting his gaze. Robert smirked. "Deductions, for damages, emotional distress to my family. Lies, blatant and bold." Sarah's blood boiled. "Damages? From saving your son?" He leaned in, voice low and venomous. "You're a liability. Pack up. You're out by midnight." Rain lashed the windows behind him, thunder rumbling like approval. Sarah's heart hammered. "James needs me. He's stable because of what I did." Robert laughed, a cruel bark. "We have doctors, real professionals, not street charity cases." He turned on his heel, leaving her standing in the doorway, the envelope crumpling in her fist. Midnight came too soon. Sarah zipped her bag, the zippers rasped like a final sigh. James's soft breaths from the monitor tugged at her. Victoria had let her say goodbye, the boy clutching her finger in sleep. "Be strong, little one," she'd whispered, tears held back. Now, stepping into the storm, wind whipped her face, rain soaking her through in seconds. No umbrella, no ride. Robert watched from the lit foyer, silhouette unmoving. Good riddance, he thought, sipping brandy, arrogance swelling. Staff peered from windows, their silence complicated. The bus stop was a mile down the dark road, no shelter. Sarah trudged on, bag heavy on her shoulder, water pooling in her shoes. Lightning flashed, illuminating the empty street. Where now? She wondered, panic rising. Her apartment key, still had it, but rent was due, and this half-pay wouldn't cover. Friends? Scattered, wary after rumors. Unstable widow, they'd hear. She reached the stop, huddling under a dripping tree, shivering. No bus for hours in this weather. Sleep on the street? The thought chilled deeper than the rain. Back at the estate, Robert paced his study, rain drumming the panes. James stirred on the baby monitor, a small fuss. He'll be fine, Robert assured himself, but doubt flickered. Victoria knocked softly. You threw her out in this? Inhuman. He waved her off. She'll learn her place. Arrogance blinded him to the storm's fury, and the one brewing in his home. Sarah found refuge in a 24-hour diner, neon signs buzzing like a lifeline. She slid into a booth, dripping water, ordering black coffee with shaking hands. The waitress eyed her bruise. Rough night? Sarah nodded, forcing a smile. You could say that. Inside, despair clawed. Job gone, reputation tarnished, body aching from the cold. What next? Beg? Memories flooded. Marcus's funeral, Grace's tiny casket. I survived that. I'll survive this. But exhaustion weighed heavy. She dozed fitfully, head on the table, dreams haunted by James's cries. Dawn broke gray and unrelenting. Sarah woke stiff, coffee cold. Her phone buzzed. Victoria. James is feverish, crying nonstop. Please. Sarah's heart lurched. He needs me. But returning meant facing Robert's wrath. No choice, she decided, pocketing the phone. She caught a bus back, rain still falling, her clothes damp and clinging. The estate loomed ahead, gates like jaws. Sneaking through a side entrance Victoria had left unlocked, Sarah crept upstairs. The nursery door creaked open. James lay red-faced, sweat beading on his brow, crying weak but insistent. "Shh, I'm here," she whispered, lifting him. He rooted immediately, latching as before. Relief washed over her, his feverish body cooling with each swallow. "You're okay now." But footsteps thundered in the hall. Robert burst in, eyes wild. "You! How dare you break in?" He'd been up all night. James's cries driving him mad, arrogance cracking under worry. Now, seeing Sarah nursing again, fury reignited. "Security!" he bellowed, lunging forward. Sarah detached quickly, holding James close. "He's sick because you threw me out! Look, he's calming!" Robert hesitated, seeing the change, but pride surged. "Thief! Intruder!" He grabbed her arm, yanking hard. Sarah stumbled, pain shooting through her shoulder, but she shielded the baby. Victoria rushed in, gasping. "Robert, stop! She's saving him, again!" Staff gathered at the door, phones out, recording the chaos. Public now, undeniable. Robert's face twisted, arrogance peaking in desperation. "Call the police! She's assaulting my child!" Lies flew, but James's peaceful coos mocked him. Sarah's eyes met his, defiant. "Assault? You're the one hurting everyone." The room tensed, air thick with standoff. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Robert had called earlier, paranoia fueled. Sarah backed against the wall, heart racing. This is it, she thought. Pushed to the brink, no home, no job, no arrest. Despair clawed, but James's weight grounded her. "For you." Robert advanced, hand raised again, but Victoria stepped between. "Enough!" The door flew open, police entering, badges flashing. "What's going on?" one asked. Robert pointed accusingly. "Trespassing. Kidnapping." Sarah's world spun. Cuffs clicked on her wrists, cold metal biting. "I was helping," she protested, voice steady despite tears. James cried as they took him from her. Dragged out in front of staff, neighbors peeking from windows, public shame at its peak. Rain soaked her again as they loaded her into the cruiser. Jail? The thought terrified me. Alone, broken, Don Vao Zhuangchung. At the station, fingerprinted, mugshot taken. Assault? Trespass? The charges blurred. Sarah sat in a holding cell, head in hands. How did it come to this? Hours ticked by, isolation crushing. But Victoria arrived, bailing her out. "I couldn't let him," she whispered. Sarah nodded, exhausted. "James?" "Stable, for now." Outside, freedom tasted bitter. No home to return to, rumors raging. Rock bottom, she thought, wandering the streets. Robert, back home, stared at James, quiet but fragile. Guilt gnawed, but arrogance whispered, "Necessary." Yet, cracks formed. The investigator called. More on her ties to Emily. Robert paused. "Tell me." The truth loomed, tension at its height. Sarah, on a park bench, rain dripping, vowed, "This ends soon," pushed to the edge, ready to fight back. The holding cell's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the concrete floor. Sarah sat on the hard bench, wrists raw from the cuffs they'd removed hours ago. Her clothes still clung damp from the rain, a chill seeping into her bones. This can't be real, she thought, head in hands. Arrested. Branded a criminal for saving a child. The officer's words echoed. Trespassing. Assault on a minor. Lies twisted by Robert's call. Public now. News vans probably swarming the estate, rumors exploding. Her phone, confiscated, left her isolated in the truest sense. Footsteps approached the bars. A guard unlocked the door. "Bail's posted. You're free to go." Sarah stood slowly, legs numb. "Who?" The guard shrugged. "Some old lady. Harrington." Victoria. Relief mixed with wariness as Sarah collected her things, stepping into the station lobby. There she was, Victoria, wrapped in a wool coat, face etched with guilt. "Come on, dear. Let's get you warm." Sarah followed silently, the drive back tense. Rain streaked the windows, blurring the city lights. "Why?" Sarah finally asked. Victoria glanced over. "Because you're right. And Robert, he's wrong." The estate gates loomed, but Victoria pulled into a side entrance. "He's asleep. James, too." Inside, the house felt heavier, shadows deeper. Sarah showered, the hot water washing away the grime but not the anger. Dried and dressed in borrowed clothes, she slipped into the nursery. James lay peaceful, fever broken. "My little fighter," she whispered, touching his cheek, but resolve hardened. No more running. She was the hero now. Time to intervene, to shatter the illusions. Downstairs, Victoria waited in the library, a fire crackling. "He's unraveling," she said, handing Sarah tea. "The investigator found something. About Emily." Sarah's eyes sharpened. "What?" Victoria hesitated. "Letters. Emily knew you." Sarah set the cup down, heart racing. It was time. She marched to Robert's study, Victoria trailing. The door was ajar. Robert slumped at his desk, Scotch glass empty, papers scattered. He looked up, bloodshot eyes widening. "You? How?" Sarah cut him off, stepping forward like a force. "Bail. But I'm not leaving until you hear this." Robert rose, arrogance flickering back. "Police let you go. Mistake. I'll—" Sarah slammed a folder on the desk. Old letters she'd found in Emily's hidden box days ago, pieced together during her isolation. "Read." Her voice was steel, the hero emerging. Robert snatched it, scanning. His face paled. Emily's handwriting. Supported Sarah Johnson's nursing school. She's family, distant, through the old bloodline. Harrington slaves bore children with the masters. She's their descendant. Our shame, but her strength. Robert staggered back. "Impossible." Sarah stood tall, the revelation pouring out. "Your wife knew. She traced the genealogy years ago, guilty over your family's history. Plantations in the South, my ancestors enslaved by yours. Raped, forced to bear children. That blood mixes in me. Emily found me through charity work and sponsored my education anonymously. She saw the injustice, wanted to amend." Robert's hands shook, flipping pages. Photos tumbled out. Old sepia images of Harrington ancestors. Slave records naming her great-great-grandmother as property. Emily's notes. "Robert must know. For our child, break the cycle." He collapsed into his chair, face ashen. She never said. Flashbacks hit. Emily's mysterious trips, her pushes for diversity in his company, her soft pleas. "We have history to fix." Now it clicked. "You're related to her?" Sarah nodded. "Distant cousin through that twisted line. Emily confirmed it with DNA before she died. And her will." She pulled the final document, sealed until now. Victoria had retrieved it from the safe. "She named me guardian for James if you faltered, fearing your prejudices would blind you." Robert's world shattered. The slap replayed. His hand on her face, now kin by blood, however diluted. I hit you. Call you nothing." Tears welled, arrogance crumbling. "Emily tried to tell me. In her last days she whispered about family secrets. I thought it was delirium." He buried his face in hands, sobbing racking his frame. Sarah watched, pity mixing with justice. She saw what you couldn't. Strength in me, weakness in your hate. Victoria stepped in, touching his shoulder. "It's true, son. I knew bits. Your grandfather buried it all." The shock rippled. Robert stood, pacing erratically. "Slavery? My bloodline?" Images flooded. Grandfather's tales of glorious heritage, now tainted. "We owned people, Forced. Children. Nausea hit. He retched into a waste bin, the mighty tycoon reduced. Sarah intervened gently, the hero's compassion shining. It's ugly, but facing it heals. Emily wanted that for James. For us. He looked up, broken. Us? Sarah nodded. Family, however broken. Sirens faded in memory, but the revelation echoed louder. Staff, drawn by noise, hovered outside. Robert waved them away, but one maid lingered, phone in hand. Recording? Public exposure loomed, but he didn't care. I was blind, he whispered. Hit you for saving my son, our blood. Sarah's eyes softened. Forgive? Earn it. He nodded, crumbling further. Victoria fetched Emily's journal, final entries. Sarah's the bridge. Tell Robert. Love conquers hate. Robert read aloud, voice cracking. She knew I'd need this shock. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating truths long buried. Sarah stood firm, the intervention complete. Change starts now. Robert met her gaze, the soak settling into resolve. Help me. The hero had struck. The truth revealed. Chains breaking. Midnight passed, rain easing. Sarah sat with James, the boy stirring to her touch. Robert watched from the door, a shadow humbled. Thank you, he murmured. She turned. For Emily. The estate breathed differently now. Secrets surfacing, arrogance drowned. But the night held more. Police reports to retract, rumors to quash. Sarah's intervention wasn't over. It was the spark. Robert, transformed in that moment, vowed silently. No more blindness. The revelation hung heavy, a turning point etched in tears and truth. Robert's knees buckled as he sank back into his chair, the folder slipping from his trembling hands. Papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, Emily's handwriting staring up at him, accusations in ink. His face drained of color, eyes wide and unfocused, as if the room had tilted. This can't be, he whispered, voice cracking like glass under pressure. The air in the study thickened, the fire's crackle mocking his collapse. Sarah stood across the desk, arms crossed, her expression a mix of triumph and quiet pity. The hero had struck. Now the villain reaped the whirlwind. He clutched his chest, breath coming in short gasps. Family. You're part of us? The words tasted bitter, laced with the poison of his own prejudices. Flashes assaulted him. The slap, his hand connecting with her cheek. The arrest, sirens wailing as she was dragged away. The rumors he'd spread, branding her unstable outsider. Now, revealed as kin, distant, twisted through history's cruelties. I hit you. My wife's blood. In you. Tears streamed down his face, unchecked, the arrogant mask shattering. Victoria moved to his side, her hand on his shoulder firm but gentle. It's true, Robert. Emily wanted this known. The estate seemed to hold its breath. Staff, drawn by the raised voices, hovered in the hallway, phones lowered, but ears straining. Whispers had already begun. Mr. Harrington's breaking. Robert heard none of it. Inside, a storm raged, guilt crashing like waves. Emily, he choked, pulling her photo from the drawer. Her smile judged him, soft and knowing. You tried to fix what I broke. He stood abruptly, pacing erratically, knocking over a lamp. The crash echoed, light flickering. The plantations. My grandfather lied. All of it. Buried to protect what? Pride? He turned to Sarah, eyes pleading. I called the police on you. Spread lies. For what? Sarah met his gaze steadily, the bruise on her cheek a faint shadow now, but the memory vivid. For control. But it's over. Her voice was calm, the vindication settling like a warm cloak. No more whispers branding her thief or intruder. The truth had flipped the script. She was the bridge Emily had built, the amends to a legacy of pain. Robert nodded, crumbling further. I'll fix it. The charges dropped. Tonight. He grabbed his phone, dialing his lawyer with fumbling fingers. Retract everything. False report. Pay whatever fines. The lawyer's surprise crackled through the speaker, but Robert barked orders. Authority twisted into desperation. Victoria watched, her own eyes misting. Call the staff in, she suggested softly. Robert hesitated, then nodded. Minutes later, the household gathered in the foyer. Maids, cooks, gardeners, their faces a mix of curiosity and fear. Robert stood at the staircase, gripping the banister for support, Sarah beside him. I was wrong, he began, voice hoarse. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah isn't just helping. She's family, connected through my wife's lineage. I spread lies about her, hid her, had her arrested. He paused, swallowing hard. She's the reason James lives, and I'm the monster. The room fell silent. Then murmurs erupted. Shock, then slow nods. The head housekeeper stepped forward, face flushed. We believed you, sir. Robert waved it off. No excuses. Apologize to her. All of you. One by one, they did. Awkward mumbles turning to genuine regret. Sorry, Miss Johnson. Didn't know. Sarah accepted with grace, her chin high. Forgiven. But remember, words cut deep. Vindication washed over her, warm and real. No more averted eyes, no more isolation. She was seen now, hero, kin, savior. Upstairs, James stirred in his crib, cooing softly. Sarah lifted him, the boy nuzzling her shoulder. Robert approached hesitantly, the villain reduced to a penitent. May I? She handed James over, watching as Robert held his son with new tenderness. He's got her eyes. Emily's, he whispered, and yours, maybe. Tears fell onto the baby's blanket. I'll make this right, publicly. He turned to Victoria. Call the press. Statement tomorrow. Full apology. Family history exposed. Victoria nodded, pride flickering in her eyes. The night wore on, consequences unfolding like dominoes. Robert's lawyer arrived, papers in hand. Charges dropped, records expunged. Lucky she didn't sue, the man muttered. Robert glanced at Sarah. She could have. But she shook her head. Not about money. About the truth. He nodded, signing affidavits with a heavy hand. Social media buzzed already. Leaked videos from staff showing the arrest, now reframed as injustice. Calls flooded in. Reporters, colleagues, even distant relatives. Scandal, one hissed. Robert didn't flinch. Let it come. I deserve it. Sarah sat in the library, James asleep in her lap, Victoria brewing tea. You're safe now, the older woman said. Sarah smiled faintly. Felt like drowning, but I swam. Vindication tasted sweet, reputation restored, purpose renewed. Staff brought her dinner on a tray, apologies in their eyes. We were wrong. She ate slowly, strength returning. Tomorrow, we will rebuild. Robert, alone in his study, stared at the family ledger. Yellowed pages detailing the horrors. Slave names, forced births, Harrington men claiming what wasn't theirs. Monsters, he thought, nausea rising. He burned a page symbolically in the fireplace, flames consuming the past. No more hiding. Calls to board members followed. Diversify the company. Fund reparations. Shock on the lines, but he pushed. Or I'm out. Power, once wielded like a weapon, now bent toward justice. By dawn, the estate hummed with change. Police issued a statement. False alarm, charges withdrawn. News outlets picked it up. Tycoon apologizes to Maid, family secret revealed. Sarah's phone returned, buzzed with support. Old nursing colleagues, neighbors. Hero, one texted. She read them, tears of relief falling. Vindication complete. No longer victim, but victor. Robert joined her in the nursery, sun rising over Puget Sound. "Thank you for not giving up." She looked at him, the man who'd slapped her, now humbled. "For James and Emily." He nodded, consequences etched in his weary face. The villain faced his reckoning. Immediate, raw, irreversible. Sarah, in pain at last, held the baby close. The house felt lighter, truths airing like fresh wind. Sunlight filtered through the estate's tall windows, casting long golden rays across the polished floors. Robert stood in the nursery, watching James play with a soft toy, the boy's laughter bubbling like a stream after a storm. It had been weeks since the revelation, but the air still hummed with change, subtle yet profound. Robert's shoulders, once rigid with control, now slumped slightly, as if the weight of his past had finally lifted. He turned to Sarah, who sat nearby, folding tiny clothes with quiet efficiency. "He's happy," Robert said softly, voice thick with emotion. "Because of you." Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting him without the old wariness. The bruise had long faded, but the memory lingered, a scar turned lesson. "He's happy because he's loved," she replied, her tone steady. Inside, she felt the shift, too. No more whispers in the halls, no averted gazes from staff. Vindication had bloomed into something warmer. Belonging. But it wasn't just about her. Emily's truth had rewritten the family's story, forcing them to confront the ugliness of their roots. "We all learn, or we break," she thought, stacking the onesies neatly. Robert nodded, sinking into the rocking chair. His face, etched with new lines from sleepless nights of reflection, softened as he spoke. "I was blind, Sarah. Raised on lies. About superiority. About lines that shouldn't be crossed. My grandfather's stories. They were poisonous." He stared at his hands, the same ones that had slapped her, now trembling slightly. "I thought power meant control, but it isolated me. Hurt everyone." Flashbacks flickered. The arrest, her defiant eyes in the rain, Emily's journal, words like daggers of truth. The lesson? Prejudice isn't strength, it's a chain. And family isn't just blood, it's choice. Sarah set the clothes aside, leaning forward. "Emily chose to see that. She reached across the divide your ancestors built." Her voice carried the weight of her own losses, Marcus's laugh, Grace's tiny fingers. "I lost everything once. Thought grief would swallow me. But helping James, it taught me resilience isn't solo. It's in the connections we fight for." She glanced at the boy, who toddled toward her, arms outstretched. "Hate divides, compassion heals. That's the moral here, for all of us." Victoria entered then, carrying a tray of tea, her steps lighter than before. "The foundation papers are ready," she said, setting it down. Robert had poured his energy into it, a scholarship fund for descendants of enslaved families, focusing on nursing education, named after Emily, with Sarah as advisor. "First grant goes out next month," Victoria added, pouring cups. Robert took one, his grip steady now. "It's a start. Reparations. Small, but real." He looked at Sarah. "Will you lead it?" She smiled faintly. "If it means breaking more chains?" "Yes." The estate buzzed with new life. Staff moved with purpose, no longer divided by whispers. The head housekeeper approached Sarah in the kitchen one afternoon, apron twisted in her hands. I spread those rumors. Forgive me?" Sarah placed a hand on her arm. "Forgiven? We all learn." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes, and hugged her briefly. Outside, gardeners planted a memorial garden, lavender bushes for Emily, symbolizing quiet strength. Robert knelt in the dirt one day, soil under his nails, a far cry from his boardroom suits. "This is for her," he murmured, patting the earth, "and for what we owed." James's first steps came in that garden, wobbling towards Sarah under the blooming flowers. Robert watched from the terrace, a genuine smile breaking through. "He's walking," he called, voice filled with wonder. Sarah scooped the boy up, laughing. Strong like his mother. Robert joined them, the family circle complete, blood ties acknowledged, but bonds forged in truth stronger. "I almost lost this," he admitted later, over dinner. The table, once tense, now echoed with easy conversation. Victoria raised a glass. "The lessons learned the hard way." As months passed, the story rippled outward. Robert's public statement went viral. "I was wrong. My family's history is stained by slavery, and I perpetuated it through ignorance. Sarah Johnson, kin through that painful past, showed me grace." Reporters swarmed, but he faced them head on. The moral? Face your shadows. Heal the wounds you inherit. Donations poured into the fund. Families shared similar stories, chains breaking across generations. Sarah spoke at a gala, James on her hip. Loss taught me empathy. Injustice taught me to fight. But the truth, it sets us free. One evening, under a sunset painting the sound, in pinks and golds, Robert and Sarah walked the grounds. James toddled between them, holding hands. "What now?" Robert asked. Sarah glanced at the horizon. "Live the lesson. Teach him. No divides. Only bridges?" Robert nodded, squeezing the boy's hand. Emily would be proud. Inside, peace settled, a quiet end to turmoil. The estate stood tall, no longer a fortress of secrets, but a home of redemption. Staff laughed in the kitchens. Flowers bloomed unchecked. Robert, a changed man, read Emily's journal nightly, absorbing the wisdom he'd ignored. Love over hate, it preached. Sarah, healed in ways she hadn't expected, found joy in James's giggles, her grief softening. Grace watches, she thought, smiling at the stars. And so, the story closed, not with fanfare, but with simple truth. Buried prejudices destroy. Unearthed, they transform. Families aren't born perfect. They're built through forgiveness, understanding, and the courage to change. In the end, compassion wins, bridging even the deepest divides. The Harringtons, once fractured, emerged whole, a testament to that enduring lesson. In the end, this story reminds us that buried prejudices and family secrets can tear us apart, but facing the truth with compassion has the power to heal and bridge even the deepest divides, proving that true family is built on love, not blood or barriers. What do you think? Have you ever uncovered a hidden truth that changed your life, or overcome bias in your own family? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay kind and curious.